Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's library, Chapter 13. What happened next was extremely cool. A holographic image of a second librarian appeared beside Dr. Zinchenko at the center desk. She looked a little like Princess Leia being beamed out of R2-D2 in Star Wars, except she had an old-fashioned bubble-top hairdo, cat's eye glasses, and a tweed jacket with patches on the elbows. Here to present our official library lock-in rules, said Dr. Zinchenko, is Mrs. Gail Tobin, head librarian of the Alexandriaville Public Library back in the 1960s, when Mr. Limoncello was your age. Overhead, the Wonder Dome had shifted back to its 10 Dewey Decimal displays. How old is she? Asked Sean Keegan. She'd be 110 if she were still alive. But she's dead and working here? Let's just say her spirit lives on in this hologram. Mrs. Tobin's the one who helped Mr. Lemoncello so much, Kyle whispered to Akimi, when he was a kid. I know. Her hair looks like a beehive. Kyle shrugged. From what I've seen on TV, the 1960s were generally weird. Welcome, children, to the Library of the Future, said the flickering projection. Dr. Zinchenko will now pass out Lemoncello Library floor plans, your map and guide to all that is this extraordinary building has to offer. Your new library cards will grant access to all rooms except the Master Control Center, the red door you passed on your way in, and, of course, Mr. Limoncello's private suite on the 3rd floor. Charles Chiltington dangled his golden key in front of his face. I believe you need this to enter that? Mrs. Tobin ignored him. She was a hologram. That made it easier. Security personnel are on duty 24 hours a day, she continued. During your stay, all of your actions will be recorded by video cameras, as outlined in the consent agreements you and your parents signed earlier. Are we going to be on a reality TV show? Asked Haley, smiling up at a tiny camera with blinking red light. It is a distinct possibility, said Dr. Zinchenko. I like television, said the ghostly image of Mrs. Tobin. Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In is my favorite program. Returning to the rules. The use of personal electronic devices is strictly prohibited at all times during the lock-in. The security guard, Clarence, and a guy who looked like his identical twin brother entered the rotunda, each of them carrying an aluminum attaché case. Kindly deposit all cell phones, iPods, and iPads in the receptacles provided by our security guards, Clarence and Clement. Your devices will be safely stored for the duration of your stay and will be returned to you at the conclusion of our activities. Also, you may use the desktop pad computers in this room to comb through our card catalog and conduct internet research. However, these devices cannot send or receive email or text messages, whatever those might be. Remember, I retired in 1973. We still used carbon paper. And now, Dr. Zinchenko will walk you through the floor plan. Everybody unfolded their map pamphlets. As you can see, said Dr. Zinchenko, fiction titles are located here in the reading room. The children's enrichment room, with soundproof walls, is over there. 2 fully equipped community meeting rooms, as well as the Book Nook Cafe behind those windows where the curtains are drawn, are also located on this floor. Upstairs on 2, you will find 10 numbered doors, each leading into a chamber filled with books, information, and, displays related to its corresponding Dewey Decimal category. Kyle raised his hand. Yes? Where's the Electronic Learning Center? Dr. Zinchenko grinned. Upstairs on the 3rd floor, where you will also find the boardroom, the Art and Artifacts room, the IMAX theater, the Lemoncello Abelia room, Can we go upstairs and play? Asked Bridget Wage. I want to try out the space shuttle simulator. I want to learn how to drive a car, said Sean Keegan. A race car. I want to conquer the world with Alexander the Great, said Yasmin Smith-Snyder. Apparently, everybody was doing what Kyle had already done, checking out the available education gameware listed on the back of the floor plan. Early access to the Electronic Learning Center will be tonight's second prize, said Dr. Zinchenko. To win it, you must use the library's resources to find dessert, which we have hidden somewhere in the building. Whoever does the research and locates the goodies first will be the first one allowed into the Electronic Learning Center. So use your wits and use your library. Go find dessert. Everybody raced around the room and sat down at separate desks to start tapping on the glass computer pads. Well, everybody except Sierra Russell. She spent like 2 seconds swiping her fingers across a screen, wrote something down with a stubby pencil on a slip of paper, then wandered off to inspect the 3-story tall, curved bookcases lining the walls at the back half of the rotunda. Kyle watched as she stepped onto a slightly elevated platform with handles like you'd see on your grandmother's walker. It even had a basket attached to the front. Dr. Zinchenko? Yes, Miss Russell. Is this safe? Because the book I want is all the way up at the top. Yes, just make sure your feet are securely locked in. Sierra wiggled her leg. Kyle heard a metallic snap. It's like a ski boot, said Sierra. That's right. Now use the keypad to tell the hover ladder the call number for the book you are interested in, and hang on tight. Sierra consulted the slip of paper and tapped some keys. The bottom of that platform you are standing on is a magnet, said Dr. Zinchenko. There are ribbons of electromagnetic material in the lining of the bookcases. The strength of those magnets will be modulated by our maglev computer based on the call number you input. 2 seconds later, Sierra Russell was floating in the air, drifting up and to the left. It was absolutely awesome. The hover ladder must use advanced technology levitation. Must use advanced magnetic levitation technology, said Miguel, seated at the desk to Kyle's right, just like the maglev bullet trains in Japan. Cool, mumbled Kyle. And for the first time in his life, Kyle wanted to check out a library book more than anything in the world. Chapter 14. How about we work together, said Akemi when she sat down at Kyle's table. Kyle couldn't take his eyes off Sierra Russell. She had drifted up about 20 feet and was leaning against the railings of her floating platform, completely lost in a new book. Hello, Earth to Kyle? Do you want somebody else to get first dibs on the Electronic Learning Center? No. Then focus. Okay, so how do we use our wits in the library to find dessert? Akemi nodded toward Miguel, whose fingers were dancing across the screen of his desktop tablet computer. I think he's doing a search in the card catalog, whispered Akemi. Why? It's how you find stuff in a library, Kyle. I know that, but we're not looking for books about dessert. We need to find actual food. Andrew Peckelman stood up from his desk and sprinted up a wrought iron spiral staircase leading to the second floor. 2 seconds later, Charles Chiltington was sprinting up the staircase behind him. All the other players soon followed. Everybody was headed to the second floor in the Dewey Decimal Rooms. Miguel finally popped up from his desk and made a mad dash for the nearest staircase. It's got to be up in the 600s, you guys, he called out to Kyle and Akemi. Thanks, said Kyle, but he still didn't budge from his seat. I guess the 600 is the Dewey Decimal category where you find books about dessert, said Akemi. Maybe we should... Wait a second, said Kyle. Kyle, in case you haven't noticed, you, me, and glider girl Sierra are the only ones still on this floor, and Sierra isn't really on the floor because she's floating. Hang on, Akemi, I have an idea. Kyle pulled out his floor plan. Dessert is probably hiding in plain sight, just like the bonus codes in Squirrel Squad. Follow me. Where to? The Book Nook Cafe, the one room in the library where, according to what Dr. Zinchenko told us back at the hotel, food and drinks are actually allowed. They strolled into the cozy cafe. Woohoo! Shouted Akemi. The walls were decorated with shelves of cookbooks, but several tables were loaded down with trays of cookies, cakes, ice cream, and fruit. That's why the curtains were closed behind the windows into the rotunda, said Akemi, so we couldn't see all this food. Way to go, Kyle! Kyle did his best imitation of Charles Chiltington. I'm Akili, Akemi. We never lose, except, of course, when we don't win. After everyone had dessert, Kyle and Akemi were the first ones allowed to enter the Electronic Learning Center. Kyle flew the space shuttle, making an excellent landing on Mars before crashing into one of Saturn's moons. Akimi rode a horse with Paul Revere. Then Kyle learned how to drive a stick-shift stock car on the Talladega racetrack while Akimi climbed into a tiny submarine to swim with sharks, dolphins, and sea turtles, all of which were projected on the glass walls of her undersea simulator. All the educational video games had 3D visuals, digital surround sound, and something new that Mr. Lemoncello was developing for his video games, smell-o-vision. When you sacked Rome with the Visigoths, you could smell the smoky scent of the burning city, as well as the barbarians' B.O. After an hour, Dr. Zinchenko ushered everybody else into the Electronic Learning Center. They'd been watching George Washington debate George W. Bush. Both were audio animatronic dummies in the town square at the center of the 900s room. At 10 p.m., they all tromped into the IMAX theater, also on the third floor, to see a jukebox concert. 3D images of the world's best musicians, living and dead, performed their hits live. The best part was Mozart jamming with Metallica. Finally, around 3 in the morning, Clarence and his twin brother Clement came to escort the kids to their sleeping quarters. The boys would roll out their sleeping bags in the children's room, just off the rotunda. The girls would be upstairs on the third floor in the boardroom. Charles Chiltington would be luxuriating all alone in Mr. Limoncello's private suite. Exhausted from the excitement of the day and crashing after eating way too much sugar, Kyle slept like a baby. He only woke up because he heard music. Loud, blaring music. Bum, 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 bum. The theme song from that boxing movie, Rocky, his brother Mike's favorite. "What's that?" he mumbled, crawling out of his sleeping bag. Kyle glanced at his watch. It was 11 a.m. He figured the library lock-in was officially over, and this was the group's wake-up call. The music kept blaring. "This is how they wake up astronauts," groaned Miguel. "Turn it off," moaned Andrew Peckelman. Kyle slipped on his jeans and sneakers and staggered out into the giant reading room. "Dr. Zinchenko?" His voice echoed off the dome. No answer. "Clarence? Clement?" Nothing. The Rocky music got louder. Akimi leaned in from the third-floor balcony. "What's going on down there?" "I think they're trying to wake up astronauts," said Kyle. "On the moon." He made his way to the front door and reached for the handle. It wouldn't budge. He jiggled it. Nothing. He jiggled it harder. Still nothing. Kyle realized that the library lock-in might be over, but they were still locked in the library. Chapter 15. "Everybody please take your seats," Dr. Zinchenko said to the parents gathered in a conference room at the Parker House Hotel. "When do our kids come home?" asked one of the mothers. "Rose has soccer at 2, said another. The librarian nodded. "Mr. Lemoncello will—" Just then, an accordion panel door at the far end of the room flew open, revealing the eccentric billionaire dressed in a bright purple tracksuit and a plumed pirate hat. He was eating a slice of 7-layer birthday cake. "Good morning," or as they're currently saying in Reykjavik, "Gott sidoki," which means good afternoon, because there is a 4-hour time difference between Ohio and Iceland, a fact I first learned spinning a globe in my local library. Mr. Limoncello, his banana shoes burp-squeaking, stepped out of a room filled with dozens of black and white television monitors, the kind security guards watch at their workstations. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this grand and auspicious day. Today I am pleased to announce the most marvelous, stupendous game ever created. Escape from Mr. Limoncello's library. The entire library will be the game board. Your children will be the game pieces. The winner will become famous all over the world." "How?" asked one of the fathers. "By starring in all of my commercials this holiday season. TV, radio, print, billboards, cardboard cutouts in toy stores. His or her face will be everywhere." Mrs. Daly raised her hand. "Will they get paid?" "Oh, yes. In fact, you'll probably want to call me the giver." "And what exactly does Haley have to do to win?" "Escape from the library. I thought the game's title more or less gave that bit away." Mr. Limoncello tapped a button in his pirate hat, and an animated version of the library's floor plan was instantly displayed on the conference room's plasma screen TVs. Whoever is the first to use what they find in the library to find their way out of the library will be crowned the winner. Now then, the children cannot use the front door or the fire exits or set off any alarms. They cannot go out the way they went in. They can only use their wits, cunning, and intelligence to decipher clues and solve riddles that will eventually lead them to the location of the library's super secret alternative exit. And ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, such an alternate exit does indeed exist. The parents around the table started buzzing with excitement. Participation, of course, will be purely optional and voluntary, said Mr. Limoncello, clasping his hands behind his back and stalking around the room. Several parents pulled out their cell phones. And please do not attempt to phone, email, text, fax, or send smoke signals to your children encouraging them to enter the competition. We have blocked all communication into and out of the library. Only those who truly wish to stay and play shall stay and play. Anyone who chooses to leave the library will go home with lovely parting gifts and a souvenir pirate hat, very similar to mine. They'll also be invited to my birthday party tomorrow afternoon. He held up his crumb-filled plate. I've been sampling potential cake candidates for breakfast. Mrs. Keegan crossed her arms over her chest. Will this game be dangerous? No, said Mr. Limoncello. Your children will be under constant video surveillance by security personnel in the library's control center. Dr. Zinchenko and I will also be monitoring their progress here in my pirate video viewing hat. Should anything go wrong, we have paramedics, firefighters, and a team of former Navy SEALs, each with the heart of a samurai, standing by to swoop in and rescue your children. It'll be like the Hunger Games, but with lots of food and no bows or arrows. Why not just have the kids play one of your other games? A parent suggested. Why all this fuss? Because, my dear friends, these 12 children have lived their entire lives without a public library. As a result, they have no idea how extraordinarily useful, helpful, and funful, a word I recently invented, a library can be. This is their chance to discover that a library is more than a collection of dusty old books. It is a place to learn, explore, and grow. Mr. Limoncello, I think what you're doing is fantastic, said one of the mothers. Thank you, said Mr. Limoncello, bowing and clicking his heels, which made them buck like a chicken. If any of you would like to check up on your children, announced Dr. Zinchenko, please join us in the adjoining room. Oh, they're a lot of fun to watch, said Mr. Limoncello. However, Mr. and Mrs. Keeley, I'm afraid your son Kyle does not enjoy the theme song from Rocky quite as much as I do.